Welcome back, everyone. All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. Now, if you've been following along, you know we've been tracking the Israelites' incredibly tough journey through the desert, right? We've seen the massive blessings they were given, but today we're looking at a pivotal and honestly completely shocking turning point in that whole journey. We're going to explore the infamous story of the golden calf and that monumental trial at Mount Sinai. It's this intense story of faith, deception, and, well, basic human frailty that honestly still hits so close to home today.
I mean, think about it. What actually happens to a nation's faith when their leader is suddenly just gone? It's a pretty profound question, isn't it? When the exact person who guides you, the one who anchors your entire belief system, is suddenly out of the picture, what do you do? Do you hold strong, or do you just completely crumble? You see, this upcoming departure of the Prophet Moses, it serves as the ultimate, definitive test of the Israelites' spiritual steadfastness. So keep that question right in the back of your mind as we go, because it is absolutely central to this entire historical event.
So, Section 1, Journey to Mount Sinai, a real test of faith.
Okay, to really understand this trial, the context is absolutely crucial. Moses, the central figure, the ultimate guide for the Israelites, was called away by Allah for a divine communion. And so he leaves his brother Aaron behind to basically hold down the fort. Now, you have to remember, this wasn't just some simple retreat up a mountain. No, this was a literal history-altering moment. We are talking about the revelation of the Torah to Moses. This was supposed to be a massive beacon of divine guidance, right? A definitive spiritual framework to shape their brand new, newly freed society. So up there on the mountain, it's this moment of pure, incredible divine elevation. But down below in the valley, well, things were about to take a very, very different turn. It is wild how fast things unraveled. I mean, within just days of Moses taking off for Sinai, there was this massive leadership vacuum. People felt it immediately. Then, in mere weeks, this figure named Samiri starts his scheming. And pretty shortly after that, a literal golden calf was actively being worshipped by the masses. By the time Moses actually returned months later, the entire spiritual foundation of the community had completely collapsed. The primary leader was out of sight, and boom, the community's steadfastness just vanished in a remarkably short amount of time.
Which brings us to Section 2, Samiri's Deception, Crafting the False God. So you're probably wondering, how on earth did a nation that had literally just witnessed incredible, reality-bending miracles suddenly revert right back to idolatry? Well, Samiri saw a vulnerability, and he set a brilliantly manipulative trap. While Moses was away, Samiri realized that this waiting nation was highly, highly susceptible. First, he totally exploits their materialism. He takes the people's gold jewelry and melts it all down into the shape of a calf. But he doesn't just stop there. Using some pretty clever ancient engineering, he crafts this hollow idol so that whenever the desert winds pass through it, it produced this eerie, lowing sound. He used that auditory illusion to boldly declare to these vulnerable people that this shiny piece of metal was their true god. It's crazy. He used a mix of flashy wealth and, honestly, a cheap parlor trick to completely hijack their faith. And while all this chaos and utter deception is unfolding down in the camp, Moses is still up on Mount Sinai, completely unaware, receiving this heartbreaking revelation. In the Quran, in Surah Taha, verse 85, Allah tells Moses, "We have tested your people in your absence, and Samiri has led them astray." Just pause for a second and think about the gravity of that. At the exact moment Moses is receiving the ultimate divine truth meant to save his people, he gets informed of their absolute, catastrophic human failure. It's just such a striking, devastating contrast.
Let's look at Section 3, Aaron's struggle, trying to stop the shirk.
Now remember, Aaron had been left in charge of everyone, and down there in the valley, he is desperately trying to maintain some semblance of order. He sees the idolatry, he knows it's blatant polytheism, and he is practically pleading with the people to stop the madness. But the frenzy over this golden calf had completely taken over the camp. It creates this stunning, almost unbelievable contrast. On one side, you have the divine truth, the pure, profound guidance of the Torah being handed down at the summit of Mount Sinai, and on the exact opposite side, a worldly illusion, Samiri's golden calf. The Israelites were actively choosing to trade ultimate divine law for a hollow piece of gold that simply caught the desert wind.
And then we reach the inevitable, dramatic climax of our explainer today. Moses descends from Mount Sinai. Now, he already knew what was happening because of the divine revelation, right? But actually seeing it with his own two eyes, that was entirely different. He returns to just unimaginable anger and sorrow.
I mean, imagine the sheer heartbreak here. He comes down bearing the literal divine law, only to witness his people, the very people he had just led out of captivity to freedom, worshiping a literal statue. The profound grief and the righteous anger he must have felt in that specific moment are almost beyond description.
Moving into section 4, today's important lesson, holding firm.
You know, it's super easy for us to sit back thousands of years later and just judge the Israelites for this massive failure. But honestly, we have to look a bit deeper at our own human frailties here, because this whole event is essentially a profound psychological study of human nature. Humans are just incredibly susceptible to worldly distractions and false glitter. We're all drawn to the shiny, the immediate, the tangible things, right? But the biggest takeaway is this. True faith isn't what you do when your leader is watching. True faith is maintaining your belief when your guide or your source of accountability is totally absent. Our absolute greatest tests in life always seem to happen when we feel unobserved, when we're just left to our own devices, because that is exactly when our true convictions are actually laid bare. So the Israelites committed this massive transgression, right? They failed this test spectacularly. But the incredible thing is, the story doesn't just end in permanent doom. So how did Allah forgive them after such a huge trial? Like, how does a community actually bounce back and find grace after such a profound, total spiritual collapse? Well, that powerful question of redemption is exactly what we are going to be covering in our very next explainer. Thank you all so much for joining me as we unpack this incredible piece of history today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.